Welcome to the Motivated Martial Arts Podcast. Your hosts, Jackson White and Gavin Cook, have been friends and Taekwondo training partners for over 40 years. This podcast will bring you a mixture of their life stories, martial arts, and business experiences to motivate you in life and throughout your martial arts journey. Adding in a mixture of inspiring interviews and some of the best traditional martial artists around today. So over to your hosts, the Motivated Martial Artists.
Welcome to the Motivated Martial Artists podcast with me, Jackson White.
And Gavin Cook.
And today we've got a real legend of English karate. He's the chief instructor of ICA, and he's also the ring sport Wacko GB. A personal friend of mine who I've known most of my life, Dev Barrett. Good morning, Dev.
Hi, good morning, Jackie.
Hi, Dev.
How are you?
Hello, Gavin here. How you doing?
Oh, hi, Gavin.
So what I'm going to do, Dev, thanks for coming on this morning. I'm going to hand you over to Gavin for your first question.
Okay, and Dev.
Okay.
So we always ask this of all of our guests, really, to see if you can give us a bit of an insight into your early life and your childhood and how you got into martial arts, please.
Obviously, started off with sport like rugby. That was my main sport for many years. And I got to a point where I felt I needed self-defense because of what I saw happening around. And I decided to get involved with a sport that I knew of was boxing. I didn't really know anything about karate or kickboxing them days. So I started boxing, totally forgetting that I actually done a little bit of judo at school, and I perhaps would have, because it was only for a few weeks. And I started boxing. Then I met up with an old friend, a guy called Johnny Johnson, and he told me that he was involved in karate when I didn't even know what karate was at that time, because we both played rugby together. We played for Warwickshire under 18s, and I said I was actually boxing, so is that any different? And he said, the fact that martial artists, they can carry on well into their old age, while boxers tend to finish quite young. So I actually went down to look at his training. He was training with a guy called Rick Jackson, Mick Jackson, Michael Jackson. And that's it. The rest is history.
Okay. So how old were you when you started the karate, Dev?
And I started boxing. Well, I actually started the karate. You're looking at 1920, I was, when I actually started doing it properly. 1920. Yeah.
What from a you mentioned you'd already previously started with boxing. What did you like about the martial art, the karate piece? What got you really into it?
Yeah, well, I started the boxing sort of 17 years old, and I've done it and I think with the boxing, it was the fact that you just use hands only, and with the martial artist, you use your legs, your feet as well, and the fact that I actually did take a good look around at martial art, done a bit of research and what an old karateka looked like as opposed to an old boxer, and I thought, wow, I think I'd rather look like that one, So that was kind of the thing that took me over.
I suppose boxing's got quite a short shelf life, hasn't it? Really, a professional boxer compared to a kickboxer or karate.
Yeah. We're talking back in those days. There was no such thing as kickboxing then. Kickboxing, maybe, parts of the world had it, but certainly not in England, not in Great Britain.
Sure, and without really wanting to give away your age, what year was that, Dev?
I don't mind giving my age away. That would have been 71, 72. When my martial art career was talked about and started. Yeah, early 70s. Yeah. 70s, yeah. I'd have to look back for my old license, actually, when I did start.
Did you find, Dev, that it was an instant attraction to the sport? You know, when you obviously got involved with or got introduced to karate, was it something you thought, oh wow, yeah, that's what I want to do? You know, or was it something that sort of just gradually took a bit of time to sort of grow on you?
No, it was instant. You know, the first lesson I watched, I thought, wow, it'd be good to do that. And I think the only thing I didn't really take to at first was it was just a little bit rigid, in the sense where which I realized it was the best thing that I could ever have done. They spent forever just working on one punch or one block or one kick forever and ever, amen. But then years later, I realized that was the best thing that I could ever have done. Yeah, and that was the thing that kind of think, well, you know, I'd rather get involved with the boxing where you throw the left, right, left hook, and it was so on the go all the time.
I mean, that's something we find now. I mean, we've talked to a number of instructors from back in the 70s. Some of them have still got schools today. Others, newer instructors. And it's, you know, for martial arts, it's about that repetition. Getting the basics, getting the repetition. Today, if you try that in your classes, you know, your classes will tend to be a lot emptier. You've got to disguise the repetition, haven't you? Doing different things.
Yeah, you find it with teaching. Obviously, I've been teaching a few years, but back in the days, I could teach properly. Nowadays, you tend to have to entertain people as well. You know, that's how it is. If you try to teach them how you should teach, you just wouldn't have many students.
No. Be more flexible on the methods. So going back to you as a martial artist, when did you have your first fight or your first competition, and how did you get on in it?
My very, very first competition obviously was a Shotokan Karate, and as I said, we had an unbelievable two instructors, Rick Jackson, and up to this day, I don't think I've seen many people who are, you know, like they were, and we were trained properly. We were trained really good, and we went to the first tournament, and I didn't win. I lost. You know, it was one of those things where it was the first one, and I didn't fit in the sense where, because I've been boxing for those years, and I was moving in like a boxer, and I got caught with, and them days it was Wazari and Ippon, you know, 2 Wazari, the fight's over. 1 Ippon, the fight's over. And he caught me with a kick, and they went, Ippon, fight's done. Didn't even get a chance to do much. Yeah. Yeah, it was, and I just remember thinking, you know, you have got to be so careful. Yeah.
It's funny because we've interviewed a number of fighters, and it's amazing just how many awesome fighters there are that have actually lost their first round, or lost their first fight, then lost their second fight, lost their third fight, and have that resilience to keep going and to become a good fighter. Yes,
I can well believe that. But the thing is, though, you know, I lost, and I just thought, well, yeah, I know what I need to work on. And then the thing is, though, because with boxing, you took a punch and then you gave 2. But with this one kick, that was it. It just didn't happen. That was it. Ippon, boop, finish.
Yeah, it teaches you to be a little bit
more...
So
it taught me to be more careful, yeah.
Without a doubt. So how did you get into the full contact side, and then, which is obviously now is kickboxing?
I obviously heard, and I've seen a demonstration, and it went on for a while, and I'd seen quite a few demonstrations, and my, you know, I say how good my instructor was, and he said, I was talking to him about it, and he said, I think you'd be very good at that. Why don't you give it a try? You know, and so, yeah, and that's why, you know, after I saw the demonstration, and they put an advert in the Combat magazine. As a matter of fact, there's a guy called Clive Tennant, and they noticed it. They're the one who actually showed me in the magazine. and it says Quest for Champions.
Okay.
And they also said, Dev, you'd be good at that. I said, do you think so?
That wasn't just trying to wind you up, was it, to get one over on you?
Well, possibly. But he said, oh, you'd be good at that. And without me even knowing, they actually entered me in the competition.
Well, that sounds like Clive.
Yeah, he did. And next thing I know, when, he told me about it, that we've entered you into this competition, and told me the date and told me what time I was going to get there. They actually done it all. So, I went along. And you were able to fight in the daytime in regular points fighting. And then in the evening, you actually fought. Because those days, you didn't fight in the ring. All full contact fighting was on a mat. So, obviously, I fought in the morning time in Shotokan. And then in the evening, when we fought on the mat again, but it was in the kickboxing. So that's really how it started. Again, one of those fights where the decision went the other way. We tried to find out when we can get another fight, because obviously try and get revenge. And from that, again, like I said, it's history.
History, yeah. So when you were boxing, did you have any fights when you were whilst you were boxing?
And I started boxing. Oh God, yeah, I must have had. It's 30 plus. I couldn't tell exact, but I know I had the club always kept a medical card. So every fight you had, I fought alongside good boxers. I actually entered the ABAs as well. Won the East or the West Midlands title, and then went along for the Midlands, and I lost. And it turned out the person that I lost to, he went on to win the Commonwealth. Vince Smith, his name was, from Birmingham. He went on to, fought for England, won the ABAs, went on, fought for England, and then he got a medal, I can't remember, was it gold or silver, in the Commonwealth Games.
Okay. Did you have many knockouts, Dev?
Yeah, that was kind of my thing. I wasn't the tidiest of boxers, but I trained hard. I trained very hard, and I was very physical. Maybe come from the fact that the rugby background, I'm not really sure, but I was very physical. So a lot of my fights were KOs. Yeah.
Excellent.
Okay, so when did you start becoming successful in the full contact karate arena?
Yeah, well, once I had that very first fight, like I said, I lost, and then I went on to fight again, and from that day on, I just won and won and won. It was very rare that I ever did lose any fight after that. I remember after I won the British title, as a matter of fact, even before I won the British title, I had international fights as well, and there was an England versus Italy. And I was selected, just very, very surprised. But I went and fought, and then afterwards, I fought for the British title, and I won that quite comfortable. And then, obviously, I really, really trained hard.
I can always remember, as a kid, a young 8-10-year-old, you training with my dad, Jackson White Senior. And I always remember how hard you used to train. And even when I used to follow you on the road on my bike, I was struggling as a kid on a bike to keep up with you when you was out running.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. I was very physical. I think my heart was so big. So a lot of the time the skill factor was later on. In my early days, it was all about that very physical. Doesn't matter. You'd go through a brick wall to get your opponent. But then as time went on, then obviously I developed, and I felt I was a lot more skillful in my latter part. But early. Yeah, talk about your dad. Yeah, he was one of my great sparring partners. Obviously, a few of the lads, we had the ones who were ex-boxers and boxers, and the ones who were good kickers. So while I was training, I had the best training partners that you could ever think of. So while I was training for the British and for any fight, it doesn't matter who I was fighting, I would have all these people that would be there, and they'd all spar with me one after the other. Jackson would come on, kick him in the face constantly, and then yeah, he did. He did, and so I would have somebody like Jackie who was a good kicker, and then I'd have somebody who was a good boxer. Then I'd be swapping in between them. So yeah, I was very, very fortunate to have those kind of people around me at the time.
I suppose it makes a massive difference having those type of people, with you on a day-to-day basis training, especially when you're sort of preparing for these big world championship bouts.
Yeah, it wasn't me. Like young Jackie just said, you remember us running. So in the morning there was his dad and a few others. We always used to meet at 6 o'clock, 6:30. We would go out and do our runs. Then we go back to gym and do the sparring. So that's a very, very important part, is not only training, but having people that's going to be with you to give you that little extra push, because you can push it to the limit that you feel, but when there's somebody there to push you that little step further, and yeah,
makes a huge
I don't
difference.
suppose I could, huge difference.
Particularly when you're sparring, because if when you're tired, you're constantly sparring quality people or opponents. Once you're tired, you can't afford to slack off, because any lapse of concentration, they'll be on you and they'll hurt you. So you've always got to be there, constantly mentally pushing yourself and physically pushing.
Yeah, and it is so important. I mean, you might push to the level you think, but when there's somebody else to give you that little bit more, it makes a lot of difference.
Did you was you always an amateur fighter, Dev, or did you ever turn professional?
Well, that never officially, but there's that word professional. It's I hear it so many times. What do people mean by professional? Is it somebody who's been paid for a fight, or is it somebody who makes a living from fighting? I still get a bit confused when people keep talking about it, because when they say, "Oh, he's a professional," and he's just had a fight that he's got paid for. Yeah, so I've had many fights where they've paid your expenses, for traveling and so on and so forth. But no, I would never ever call myself a professional. Yeah.
Okay. When did you? I've been to your old gym a few times in Coventry. I know it's you've got a new one now. When did you sort of make that decision to open your own gym up, Dev? Well,
I'm eldest of the 7 of us. When I tell people I've got brothers and sisters, they always seem to think I was the only child now, but yeah, I was the eldest of 7. Okay. And I just always remember my father working constantly. He worked on nights, so sleeping in the day generally. And my father took early retirement when he was 52, and he was going to go back to Jamaica, and he was thinking about doing that. So he went over to look for some land and house and all that sort of thing. And the intention was to try and go back to Jamaica. And then he was out there for 2 weeks, had a brain hemorrhage and passed away. Yeah. Then, obviously, I had to go over to sort all the arrangements out. And then afterwards I thought to myself, my father, he's never really done anything except for working. His life just went as he retired to live a bit of life, and he's gone. So I felt I wanted to do something rather than just work. I felt I wanted to do something that I wanted or something that I liked. And after my father had passed away, I went over to Florida and spent a bit of time there. I decided to take some time out. And then I visited a lot of clubs while I was there and trained as well. And I noticed that the Americans, most of them had full-time dojos, full-time gyms. And it's something that we never had over here. And so that was when I thought to myself, yeah, I'm going to do it this way. Because, there's quite a lot of them who had it as a full-time job. And so I came back to England. I used to work as an electrician, and I decided, well, this is it. I'm going to pack in. And that's really the thing that pushed me into starting as a full-time job. Well, I don't ever call it a job. I've never called what I do a job, because people find it a bit strange. They'll say, well, what do you work as? I said, well, I don't really work, actually. I said, well, what do you do? How come you afford a house and a car? I said, I teach most days. I go to tournaments. I do this, I do that. Yeah, so that's what I do. I've got a hobby. I'm lucky enough that hobby can give me a living as well. But yeah, so I've never looked at what I do as work. And yeah.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it? It's great if you can enjoy what you do every day, never see it as a job, because at the end of the day, like you said, life is short, and and it's important that that you're enjoying what you're doing, not just at weekends, but you shouldn't just live the weekends. You've also got to enjoy what you do, every day, really.
Absolutely, I love what I do. Yeah, like I say, I just cannot see it as, because if I wasn't doing this as something that creates a living for myself, I probably would be doing it for nothing. Seriously, I do. I enjoy being around the people as well.
Okay, if we take one step back, what year did you win your world title, Dev?
Yeah, the world title was won 1983, and that was at the Wembley Conference Centre.
Okay, can you quickly talk us through that fight?
Again, it wasn't like a fight that was against a person. It was at a tournament. It was the WACO World Championships. Luckily, the draw was done. I had a bye in the first round. Went on to fight the French champion at the time. It was knocked him down in the second round, and it's points decision. I won. Then afterwards, I fought the Swiss champion. It was a KO in the second round. And then I went on to fight the German in the final. And them days we fought. Yeah, it's all in one day.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all done in one day.
And how many rounds in each bout?
Well, because there was so many. Because there was just so many competitors. But But nowadays you just wouldn't be allowed to do that. Fight 3 times in one day. No.
Okay, that's really interesting. So, just from winning that, did you continue other full contact fights, or was that pretty much it for you once you got that world title?
That was pretty much it. There was the person who kind of looked after WACO at the time was somebody called Mike Haig. I think most martial artists them days would know him, and he was the one who obviously kind of decided. I was fixed up to fight a couple more, but he's always said, well, what is it that you've got to win? What do you want to do? What's the point, of fighting? I wouldn't have mind. I did do quite a few sort of demo fights that were really like fights, but I didn't actually fight in the World Championships again. Because there was I think the main thing he wanted us to do is teach. We wanted us to run tournaments. We wanted us to organize everything. Maybe that it was a selfish thing on his part. I don't know, but it worked out great for us. So rather than us concentrating on fighting, we were concentrating on building the organization. We were teaching a lot. We were reffing, judging. Yeah. So I guess that's probably why I didn't fight much more, because I then obviously teaching full time as well. So yeah.
Who would you say was your toughest opponent then, Dev?
My toughest ever. There's somebody called from Yugoslavia, which was called Yugoslavia. There was somebody called Branko Sikotic.
Okay.
If you look him up, he was known as the Iron Man of Europe.
Okay.
And yeah,
and
he's somebody that I remember hitting him, like absolutely with every ounce of power and weight that I had.
Yeah.
And as I hit him, he just done a jump back kick and nearly took my head off. And I thought, he was. It's almost like it was like a nightmare afterwards. That was before I won the world title, anyway. But even the world title fights wasn't as tough as fighting Branko.
Yeah. Rocky versus Ivan Drago, was it?
Along those lines, yeah.
Okay then. So, how did you get involved with ECA then?
ECA.
Yeah.
Well, it's a little bit of a long story in the sense where the very first full contact, which is what it was called then, full contact karate, the very first association was the PKA. And I was a member of that group. And then it went on to another organization. And then we went on to become WACO. And so we were WACO at one time. And then after the 83 World Championship, I had no idea what these problems are because I was just an instructor. And we changed to ECA, and I became an instructor with ECA. So it was the same organization that changed because of politics, I guess. But that was out of my league. I was just teaching and enjoying my teaching and wasn't really bothered with that side of it. And so from WACO, it became ECA, and then WACO carried on. I think who was in charge would have been Mike Hague. So pretty much you can say, in a nutshell, he left WACO, and all the people who were in WACO then obviously left with him, and ECA was formed. And ECA went on as a very good organization for many years. And then he moved on. I was voted in as the next person that was going to run it and take over. Even without my choice. It wasn't, they just voted me in. And after I was voted in.
Head then of that organization?
That was from mid-90s. I've been in charge of ECA. So, because it's one of those things that happens in martial arts, politics, and when politics brings problems, if it's not dealt with properly. And Mike Hague moved on. Like I say, I was elected to be the one who's going to take it further.
That's really interesting. Also, you look after head of ring sports for WACO as well now, WACO GB.
Yeah, WACO GB. It's an amazing organisation. They have members in 90 plus countries. So when you go to their Europeans or World Championships, it's huge, real big. So, I'm again very fortunate to be in this position. I had a phone call one day just to say, well, we would like you to get involved with WACO, the ring sport, because obviously that's what your speciality is. And I said, yeah. And that would have been 2010.
Okay.
So I've been involved with WACO since then as a coach. As a matter of fact, obviously I was one of the first members of WACO when it first started. Sorry,
Dev. Go, you carry on. Sorry.
I can say, so I've been working with WACO since then. About 2012, we were recognised by the IOC as an organisation, and from then till 2017, we've been going through various hoops with the IOC and
National Olympic Committee.
Yeah, and the organisation's been going through a lot of different hoops, as I said, And in 2017, we went to the World Games. At the World Games, there was probably 50 other disciplines that included American football, including frisbee, including different weight lifting disciplines they try to put in. We were elected as one of the sports that's going to be an Olympic event soon.
Okay.
So at present, we're on 3 years probation.
So kickboxing, that is, then we're talking about that, Dev. So kickboxing,
yes,
will become will it be like a demonstration sport, do you think, or how will that be integrated into the Olympics? Do you know?
Well, what they've said, we've done 1 year of the probation already. So after 2 years, we will be allocated to an Olympic event. It may be the one that comes after the 2 years, or it could be the one after that. We're not really sure yet. But all we've been told, after 2 years, we will be allocated to an Olympic event. And I guess all sports will go in as a demo sport, and then the following Olympics, they are accepted as a full sport.
Yeah, no, it'll certainly be exciting to see kickboxing as an Olympic event, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to do a lot for kickboxing. The Olympic is the icing on the cake, but for me, the fact that the sport is going to be recognised by the Sport England, the old Sports Council of Sport England, we're going to be recognised by them, which does a lot for our students. We can probably teach properly in schools. We do after school classes, but we're going to be accepted. All those are fantastic, yeah.
So are there any up and coming fighters that we should potentially keep an eye on in the up and coming years?
Yeah, there is. It's unreal. I've just not long come back from the European Championships. There was 1,600 competitors, and that's just juniors. And juniors is like under 19s. The kids, they are just unreal. They are so fast. I mean, when I look at how they are now to what we used to be, I think back in the days we were more gutsy. The talent is just unreal. There's so many. It's just so hard as to choose because everybody are just very close. You get the occasional dynamic person. Like back in the days, we used to get this person that could beat everybody, but it seems like everybody can compete with anyone nowadays.
Yeah. Do you think that the kickboxing that's going to be in the Olympics, is it going to be a points system or more? Is it more like continuous?
Well, as far as how it's been, it will be the K1.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you're familiar with K1, but it will be the K1. Yeah, obviously through WACO. Yeah.
Just talk us through the rules on K1 then, Dev. So I guess it's boxing, but is there like a number of kicks that must be thrown per round?
No, that's the full contact.
Okay.
You've got full contact, which is kick above the waist. K1, generally, you're allowed to knee, but you must, like in Thai boxing, you hold, and you just knee and knee to when you want to stop. But with K1, you're only allowed to knee once, and then you have to release your opponent, and then you can grab again and knee. You're also allowed to kick below the waist. You can do leg kicks, you can do, and kick above the waist also.
Okay.
So that's kind of the general thing that is different. Like with the kick, full contact, as they call it, kickboxing, as the world know it as kickboxing, all kicks must be above the waist, and you have to kick and punch throughout the fight. Some organization say you must do 6 kicks every round, and some say you must just kick and punch throughout the fight, not just become a boxer for minute and a half and then kick at the end. No.
So that will certainly be a lot more dynamic than than anything that's currently in the Olympics, for sure.
Oh, yeah, that is it. When you go to an event, just some of the championships, the Europeans or the worlds, and you see the talent. Yeah, very incredible.
Okay, so Dev, just a question that we always ask all of our guests. Obviously, we're sort of getting sort of nearing the end of the interview really now. Is what motivates you? What's that? If you could sort of bottle it and put it in a glass, what's that one thing that motivates you throughout of all of your martial arts career?
Whoa. Can you repeat that question? What's the one thing that motivates me?
Yeah, what's
now or then?
Yeah, just over the span of your career, if you could sort of just bottle that one thing that really has kept you motivated all of this time.
I would put it down to, if you want to put it in one word, is achievement.
Okay.
If you could put it down to one word, I would say it's like to help and to achieve.
Achievement for yourself and achievement for your students and
oh gosh, yeah. Well, achievement doesn't mean me. Is when I go to an event and one of my students wins. Wow. It's I could almost say it feels just as, if not more, than how I felt when I won.
Yeah. There's a sense, isn't there, when you're a fighter and you win for yourself, it's great. But actually, I feel more achievement, more accomplishment when one of my students wins, because it's their effort and it's our joint effort, and it means more to me.
As a matter of fact, when I used to fight, I think I used to fight for my friends, my students, I was fighting for them rather than myself. Yeah, they seemed a lot more happier than me when I won. Honest, yeah. But yeah, I think, when I say achievement, I don't mean achievement for myself. If one of my students get a black belt, wow, it's great.
Yeah, no, sure.
Okay, right, final question then, Dev. Again, something we always ask, because we're always looking for motivated, inspirational people on the show. Who would you want to see on one of our podcasts? Who would you want us to interview? Who's got a really inspirational story that you think people would want to hear?
There is so many.
You can only pick one, though.
Yeah, there's
and hopefully someone that's still alive that we can get hold of.
Yeah. Bruce Lee.
Yeah, I mean,
Lee, unfortunately, he's not there.
I mean, I'm even going to go out the box. I'm even going to go out away from somebody that I actually part of our group, because he's just come to my mind straight away. Alpha Lewis.
Okay, yeah. His name's popped up once or twice.
Has it?
Yeah.
Have you got a contact for him?
Yes, we have. Yeah. We will have to get hold of him.
Yeah, there is a few, but you want one, so I'll.
Yeah, and also they've got to be willing as well.
Well, yeah, true.
It is, yeah. Yeah, it's always good to understand, because when we're examining our martial arts history and trees in the UK, so many people are interlinked and intertwined, different organisations, different styles. So many people have worked together, trained together, had links in with each other, and it's almost like mapping a huge family tree in the UK of martial arts. And there's a tenuous link to everybody, so it's always quite interesting.
I think people were, obviously you guys got iPads and stuff nowadays, but even back in the days, people were linked very close.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah.
Okay then, Dev, we're gonna call it there. But thank you very much for your time. It's been an absolutely fantastic insight, and well worth all the phone calls and texts I've been sending you to get you onto the show.
Yeah, thanks very much, Dev.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of Peter Edwards?
Peter Edwards?
No, I've not. No, but I'll write that name down now.
he's another one. You know, he's head of WACO GB. He's probably the one who's won more world titles than anybody else in this country. Him and I think alongside Alfie.
Okay, we'll reach out to those guys and let them know that you've recommended them.
Or force them.
Yeah. Sorry?
Or force them to come on.
Peter Edwards, he's a good guy. I mean, obviously there's two of them at the top. There's Peter Edwards and Neville Ray.
Yeah.
They kind of probably be very similar stories, but Peter has won, I think, alongside our friend Alfie, more world titles than anyone else in this country.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay then, Dev, we'll let you go. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Don't forget to like our Facebook page and our Facebook group, The Motivated Martial Artist Podcast.
Or check us out on Instagram, The Motivated Martial Artists,
where you'll see much more content and early insight into some of the interviews and some of the guests and some of the conversations around the things that we're discussing. Hope to see you all next week.
Bye for now.
Bye.